This perfect union of objectivity and subjectivity, which is just called imagination, needs some form of parameters. It needs some form of boundaries so that we can actually experience it. And that's what reality is. The more we awaken out of reality, the more we want to know what is reality. So today, I'm going to be explaining what reality is so that we can truly create our own reality. We don't normally understand that when we ask what is reality, we are really asking what is God? Because God and reality are one and the same. They are the observer and the observed. They are the creation and the creator. So reality reflects God. This is very important because even though we might not be very aware of it and it might not be very apparent, how we view God and that concept of God is really what we think of creation or what reality is itself. And from there, there's a trickle-down effect. How we view this concept of God creates a cascade effect into how we view this concept of us, a person, or how we view this concept of us, reality or creation. And so it's very important to understand that whenever we're talking about something as large as reality itself, we are also talking about God and what that type of force, what that type of being is actually when it comes to creating this reality. Now, there are several different spiritual systems that you can run this concept of God through. You can run all of this through a very organized and structured esoteric system. You just need to pick one. You could pick a Hermetic order. You could pick Rosicrucianism. You could pick esoteric Christianity. They will all have some very structured and organized form of the chain of creation or a celestial hierarchy, or that we go through evolution and involution through the time period known as a kalpa. So there's many different ways that we could look at how reality is organized. But I'm going to go one step above perennialism today. Everything I just said is under a category called perennialism. So when we're talking about reality creation beyond the cycles of time that perennialism has established and passed on to us, now we're talking about reality creation from source level consciousness. So it's reality creation beyond the first level of reality creation that we're seeing, where there's forces or angels that put into motion specific dynamics which create specific laws, which then we get to experience as reality, okay? So beyond that, how would God create? How would source God? When we're talking now about our source self, how is that? What's reality at that level? At that level, it's even beyond this concept of love. Because usually what we think of is that God is only good, and therefore God is only love. But God is everything. So it's more accurate to really call it source, but God or source, whichever you prefer. Source is everything. Because it's everything, it is not an entity. It does not have a definable gender, as much as we'd love to project that onto source. It is everything, both potential and possibility and probability and actuality. It is everything both unmanifested and manifested. Everything that we will think of in the future and everything that has been thought of already. So it's things that we don't know will be created and things that we have already explored very well and in depth so that we've already understood deeply. Because of that, it's so much that we can only really comprehend our source self, our God self, through imagination. Our imagination is the direct link to our God self. Our imagination is the closest proximity to our source self. Because what's imagination? It's anything. So we really have to tap into this when we're understanding reality creation and what reality is. It's at the level of imagination. And when we're talking about reality itself, it's imagination that then got structured. So it's almost like Play-Doh that then got put in a specific shape. And that's what reality is, at its highest level, of course. We get more fine-tuned and more fine-detailed from there. But reality is literally the shape of God's imagination, whatever that wants to be. So, for instance, in this universe, or in this aeon, it's exploring specific themes through light. Light is, believe it or not, a theme. Why? Why would light be a theme for a reality? Because as soon as you start talking about light, now you have a full-blown reality, because light creates shadow. You can't have really a light that does not cast some form of a shadow. So already there, that's a whole theme. That's a whole universe where you can explore that theme of light just at different capacities. Or let me say this another way. At different levels of crudeness or subtlety. What we call source, spirit, or God can also be called imagination. It can be called many names, but I want to focus in on imagination right now, because that is the part of source that we call mind. When we hear that all is mind from the Hermetic principles, that is directly referring to this aspect of God called imagination. And imagination is our true creative power. At the highest level, we are all just creative energy. We are hallucinations wearing a veil of logic. This is why thoughts create our reality, because our mind is a fractal of all is mind, and our thoughts come from the power of imagination. But Source has more than one aspect to it. Source is not just imagination. It's also one. This oneness is experienced as the unified field of consciousness. It's still Source and imagination. It's still mind, but its oneness brings another dimension to us than thinking. It now brings feeling. Feeling is the part of Source that recognizes all is one. Feelings are what create reality just as much as thoughts. All of life is sentient, even if we don't see it. And this sentience comes from oneness and is creating reality through magnetism. Sentience is creating both at God level and from our personal reality. So reality creation first starts off with the part of us that is Source, our God self, creating through imagination a theme. You could look at it kind of like we're focusing in, we're magnifying in on one attribute or one quality of all of the sea of infinite intelligence or imagination. So we're exploring one theme, one quality, and we're just zooming in, zooming in, zooming in, until we're now inside that theme or that quality in all of imagination. So this quality is light. And so we're zoomed all the way into light and exploring light. And so with that already, we have dialed in on what reality is. This will help us. This will make us so less confused when we first understand how to create reality when we're talking about it in this sequence. Or else then we're just going to go think we could grow wings, and why can't we grow wings, or whatever it is that we're wanting to manipulate in a way where we're truly just not understanding how reality works. This is the first place to start, all the way from its origins. So we zoom in, because we're Source, into one quality of creation, and we explore that. And that is called an aeon. An aeon is a whole universe that is a time. So aeon is a time, as well as a theme. Aeon is time, theme, and then the third aspect, it's a being. But in this case, it's a consciousness. So aeon is all three of those. It's a consciousness or a being, but also a whole universe and also a whole theme, which makes sense because usually when we see some sort of being, they're already tied to some sort of attribute or theme or archetype. And so we're in that archetypal reality of light. Now from there, once we've honed in on that theme or quality, and now we're exploring it as a universe, now that theme is what creates the reality of it. So, for instance, we're in light. Well, from light, first we see there is shadow. So there is a duality that naturally takes place, even at a very refined level. Even if we're not immersed all the way down into the densities of this universe of light. Even at the highest level, we're still experiencing just subtle forms of contrast at that point, subtle forms of duality. Because light is the theme of this universe and what everything is centered around for reality creation here, it's centered around creating through light. Now we have also, just like a battery, a positive and a negative charge, electromagnetic. And through that positive and negative charge, that's also known as attraction. So that's where we get law of attraction from. It's coming from the fact that we are ultimately in a universe of light, and therefore how the laws in this reality are being expressed is through duality, through polarization, just at different levels, but through light. And therefore, what that's ultimately doing is setting up realities under the law of attraction, because the attraction of the light and shadow, or the negative and positive polarities within oneself, is how it's organized to experience light. So bringing this back all the way to its highest level. Reality is parameters. Reality is some form of parameters or boundaries so that we can interface with imagination. Because we are infinite and eternal. We are everything and nothing. And because we are infinite and eternal and everything and nothing and what was and what will be, because we're source, we need to simply put parameters on that to experience something that we can call objective. So at the highest truth of what reality is, reality would be subjectivity and objectivity in such perfect union that you could not actually see a definition of that's objective or that's subjective. They would coexist so harmoniously that we can't really call it one or the other. If we were to perceive reality at its highest level as that's objectivity, we'd simply only be seeing one side of the coin. And so we'd be interacting with our infinite nature through the lens, through strictly the perception, or through the dimension of objectivity. And it still wouldn't be the whole objective truth. Objectivity and subjectivity have no differentiation at the highest level of reality. And this is important, so you can pause that and kind of integrate that or meditate on that. Instead of just calling it word salad, you can really sit with that, and then the next part will just be the natural unfoldment of that. And what this next part is that objectivity and subjectivity are in such perfect union at this highest level of reality, at this highest level of what is the multiverse, what is source. It's everything. So it would be that, and that is the force that I'm calling imagination. It is this thing that's perfectly unified objectivity and subjectivity. So this perfect union of objectivity and subjectivity, which is just called imagination, needs some form of parameters. It needs some form of boundaries so that we can actually experience it. And that's what reality is. Now, that's done through a theme, like I said earlier. So how we start putting boundaries around infinity, around eternity, is how we are able now to start creating something objective, something with structure, something that now we're able to have a visceral or tangible experience of. So this is where we start understanding things like the oversoul, and then even more down from there, streams of consciousness from that oversoul or souls. It's at this level now. Source creates reality from its imagination through fields of sound and fields of light. These are the primal fields, and it is from these fields of primal sound and primal light that the construct of this hologram is created. In mysticism, these primal fields of sound and light have been called vibration, absolute motion in space, or the primal waters, among other names. These fields hold Source's intention for this universe, and the intention is just like a blueprint. For instance, we are in a free will universe, or what is known as a consensus reality, where literally any paradigm or spiritual system or subset reality that we want to experience and that we want to explore, we absolutely can. So once we enter this universe, if we want to experience a physical form, we can create that experience. We just have to do it by incarnating in the third density of this universe, because the higher densities do not contain that specific experience. Do you see now what create your own reality means? It's happening at multiple levels of ourself. The first level being Source. The second level being entering whatever level of this universe that we want to experience. And then the third level of creation is when we are inside the reality now, inside that dream. At this level, we are still creating our reality, but we also have to discern that we are in a reality that has laws already at work. So it's a co-creation within the parameters of this density. And it's also a co-creation with other individuals who also have free will. Now, to truly create our reality at this point, we cannot be in denial. In fact, a spiritual awakening is the act of coming out of denial. Denial in any form. The process of awakening is to come out of denial to the aspect of us that is Source. It is also not denying our emotional body. It is not denying any aspect of what makes up our consciousness. An awakening is coming out of a cosmic denial on all levels. So the funny thing is that we think that reality is super real, and we think that it is factual and structured, and really it's just layers deep in a dream. Not just a dream, like a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream. And that is what reality is. It's layers deep in a dream, just so we could experience something eminent and real and structured enough to have boundaries that you have to push against. So all of creation and reality is actually Source. We're all God. We're just chest deep in a dream. Now, where love comes back into all of this is that when you're deep in a dream, you evolve. And when you're evolving, that's you breaking out layer by layer, or just growing, maturing out of that layer of a dream, or those parameters that you needed to create that specific version of reality. You outgrow it. When you outgrow it, that's evolving. And you evolve layer out of a dream. This is not only evolution, this is also what would be called love, because love is order. It's a wish to know, a wish to experience, which creates order, something for you to have structure and parameters to experience reality through, but also a way out when you're done. Or not when you're done, when you're evolving. So what we're doing is also exploring who we are at a reference point. At all these different reference points, we're just Source experiencing Source through creation and creation, through reference points. But we evolve as we're experiencing, hopefully. Not everyone at all the same time, but we're evolving. And when we're evolving out of these reference points, there's something that would create an order, right? You can't just evolve out of being an awful and unconscious person. So there's an order, and that would be called a teleological goal. It would be something that creates, even if it's a long term, it'd be something that creates some form of way out of the dream, some form of way into growing out of each layer. And that would also be love. So love comes down, meaning love is how you get to create structures into these different realities, so you get to experience them. And then love is also that mechanism called evolution. Love loves you enough to also pull you out of the dream state, pull you out, or allow you to liberate yourself into higher levels of consciousness. So love is both of those forces, which I'm just calling order. Now for the fun part. How do we create reality within reality? Well, the first rule of Fight Club is you have to understand what reality is, which is why I went into depth right now to bring us here. We have to understand that, or else we're going to be lost in our own wishes, our wish to create reality, but we don't even fully understand that. We didn't really play that out. And so what reality is at this point that we want to create reality from needs to really be understood. From there, we bring in the 3 different aspects of our energy field. And when all 3 of those aspects come into harmony, we are the strongest in our creator ability. Here's why. The first is the mental body. And the mental body is what we could look at as the God self. It's spirit unleashed. It is purely liberated. So that's why when we go through an expansion of consciousness, we truly understand how unlimited we are. It's because the mental body we're remembering that truth, that we are source. So we can create whatever we wish to experience. That is true. And it cannot negate the other truth, which is the visceral or the sentient experience. So we could look at that as the heart center. The heart center is also a part of our energy field and also a manifestation that we experience through oneness, empathy, feelings. All forms of sentience are really pointing to this innate and core oneness. And that's expressed through what is the heart center. And then you have the physical body and physical reality. And this is where we're getting down to the actual, tangible manifestation. And so when we're talking about this body, this is known as the will, but it's also known as action. So you have thoughts coming from the mental body, emotions coming from our innate oneness or the heart center. And now you have action coming from the physical experience or coming from the will. So these 3 aspects you could look at as different parts of consciousness itself. So we have thoughts which create reality based off of our mental body, which is source consciousness. So coming from our source self, we can create through thoughts. Then we have our emotions that also are creating, and they're creating just as much as our thoughts. And our emotions are coming from our heart center, which is still God. It's just coming from a different aspect of the all. And then we have our actions, thoughts, emotions, and actions. And actions are linked to the will or linked to physical reality. So our thoughts, emotions, and actions, when they are unified, when they are in harmony with one another, is what creates our reality. If one of these aspects are denied by the other aspects, so let's say if our thoughts and our actions deny our emotions, then we cannot powerfully create. So if our thoughts and our emotions deny our actions, then we cannot create our own reality. or if our actions and our emotions are denying our thoughts, we cannot powerfully create our reality. We don't need to be perfect in all three of these aspects: thoughts, emotions, actions. But we have to have a working thesis. We have to have some understanding of this, because we will accidentally or just straight up deny different aspects of our own consciousness and then suffer because we think we can create our reality, but we don't understand why we can't create our own reality. There are so many different versions of reality to experience just within light and within the different densities of light. If you'd like to know more about what I mean by densities and how they differ from dimensions, watch my video, The Difference Between Dimensions and Densities. So we can experience so many different versions of reality just within a bandwidth of reality. It doesn't even all need to be the same exact types of parameters that are being played out, even within the same density. So the force that creates our reality is love. Love is a wish to know. And imagination holds all truths. I hope this has helped you create your own reality. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.